We have
Thank you.
50 people. Okay. So let me run this video for 2 minutes and then we can.
Everything is opposite, Madhu. So can I close it? Can I?
Yeah, unmute. Okay.
Everybody except the speaker.
Suresh is muted, unmuted. Suresh is muted. So let me read the AAPI disclaimer for teleconference COVID-19. The services of AAPI COVID-19 teleconference is for information purpose only, should not be considered as medical or financial advice. AAPI has no liability as to how this is interpreted. No liability to results, losses, damage that may be caused directly or indirectly or incidentally. Please refer to CDC website and your state government health authority for information and update. Thank you. So where is Suresh?
I'm seeing his screen. I'm seeing Dr. Suresh's screen.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for joining Dr. Lokesh Idara and Dr. Kalai Chalam for moderating this session. And we have great speakers and Dr. Uma Jonnalagada, Dr. Bellamkonda Kishore, Dr. Prasad Garmella, Dr. Padmaja Rusumilli, and the chair of obesity is Obesity Committee, Dr. Uma Koduri. As you all know, obesity has been established a disease, and this year we have done some amazing events with a team of soldiers. And I let Dr. Lokesh Idara take it from here.
Thank you, Suresh. I really appreciate this opportunity. And so we'll be starting today, beginning with obesity and COVID-19. And you already mentioned our great speakers. I have read the disclaimer. One thing I would like to mention before we start is we have here the news across the country regarding the steroids use, including all newspapers across the world. So that is a big breakthrough. Then our goal will set very early. Then I will ask Dr. Kalai to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Kishore Bellamkonda. Dr. Kalai, please. Thank you. One. You are unmute. Vijaya, we can't hear.
No, she's unmuted.
Okay, go ahead, doctor. We not hear her. We can't hear. Can you hear? She talked before. No? Okay, I will go ahead and I will go. Kalai, can you talk? We can't hear you. No. There's something. Let me go ahead and start introduce. Can you hear? Oh, can you unmute? Yeah, go ahead, talk. You're Vijaya, can you unmute her? Yeah.
I did.
Go ahead, go ahead. Oh no, let me start. I'm not hearing Dr. Kalai.
Sit here.
I don't know what's technical. Well, let me go ahead and introduce then. First speaker is Dr. Kishore Bellamkonda. He's a research professor, internal medicine, adjacent associate professor, nutrition, integrative physiology. One of his works is Dr. Kishore and his collaborators identified and filed patents for novel drug targets for the treatment of acquired NDA and diet-induced obesity, vasopressin excessive state, and he has more than 30 years of research experience in renal physiology. He is working from Utah. Dr. Kishore, can you, sir, go ahead and present?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the AAPI leadership for giving me this opportunity to present the basic aspects of obesity. Sorry. So we all know that obesity is a major problem in general with regard to the health of the people at all ages and especially the aging population. On May 14th, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, the chief scientist at the World Health Organization, said, I would say in a 4 to 5 years time frame, we could be looking at controlling this disease. That means there's some minimum time required for us to come out of this current coronavirus pandemic. What is going to happen is, as a pandemic, it may subside, the curves may flat down, but this disease may remain as an endemic all over the world, which we can think as a pan-endemic. That means an endemic condition extending all over the world. So it's an unwanted guest. It is going to stay with us for a long time, for 5 years. So we need to live with it, and we need to find how to make the best use of our resources and our knowledge to protect ourselves. Now, whether we like it or not, we have entered the age of coronavirus as early as in 2003.
Sir, the hands తీసేయండి మైక్ నుంచి మీ ఫేస్ కనపడదు మీ హ్యాండ్స్ కనపడుతుంది థాంక్స్
Can you see my slides?
Yeah. No, you have to share the screen.
I'm sharing the slides. Can you see me? See the slides?
No, you did not share the screen.
Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. Sorry about that. Can you see now?
Yeah.
Can you see the slides now?
Whatever you see on the screen, can you see? Nataraja picture there.
Sorry, let me go back. Yeah, I see the Nataraja picture.
Okay, then move on to the next slide.
Can you see the slide now?
Well, whatever you see on the screen.
Sorry about it. I thought we got it properly. We did the file. Can you see now? Can you see the PowerPoint now?
No.
PowerPoint.
Okay, when I click the share screen. Somebody's using the screen, it says.
Somebody using screen?
Yeah, now it's okay. Now you can see.
Vallapalli Subbarao is using screen. Can you, Subbarao garu, can you exit share screen, please? You can try again, sir.
Okay. Can you see now the slides?
Yeah. Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Make the full screen. Yeah, that's good. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Okay. See, whether we like it or not, we have entered into the age of coronavirus as early as the early 2000s when we have some of these coronaviruses infecting. Basically, these coronaviruses cause respiratory illnesses in humans. There are about 4 types. 2 of them are beta and 2 of them are alpha types. And we have seen them in the early 2000s as most are Mediterranean respiratory syndrome virus, which is a beta one, and then SARS of 2003, which is also beta one, and the current one, which is a novel coronavirus very similar to the SARS, the first SARS we have. All these originated from animals, so they are zoonotic diseases, and there are hundreds of them in the nature, and we can expect that some of them will come back into the humans and cause similar types of endemics or pandemics, so we have to be prepared. Now, obesity impacts, we think that obesity impacts mostly non-communicable diseases like diabetes or hypertension or metabolic syndrome, but obesity also impacts the communicable diseases with equally well. Obesity is a significant risk factor for the case fatality rates in COVID-19. We have seen there are a lot of papers coming up. Then CDC has recently said obesity, especially severe obesity, more than 40 BMI or body mass index is associated with higher risk level for complications due to COVID-19. And there are interesting studies showing that obesity drives the severe complications of COVID into the younger ages. There's a lot of data showing that younger people who do not have comorbid conditions like diabetes or hypertension are having severe COVID. And similar negative impact of the obesity has been observed previously in the patients during the H1N1 pandemic of 2009. And unfortunately, nobody noticed it, and all those old papers are coming into the, all those old data is coming into the limelight now. Now, obesity can affect COVID-19 risk in different levels, starting from the infection to the complications in the clinic. And I have listed some of them. This is not an exhaustive list. There may be more. Basically, obesity weakens both innate and adaptive immune system. And we have to note down in most of the times in coronavirus or most of the viral diseases, it is the innate immune system that comes into the play first before it goes to the adaptive immune system and antibodies develop. So it basically, obesity weakens the innate immune system and makes us very susceptible for the infections. Now, vitamin D, it gets sequestered in the fat. And if a person is obese, more and more vitamin D gets sequestered in the fat. And the bioavailability of the vitamin D is low in obese people. So that is another issue. And obesity also facilitates the entry of coronaviruses into the cells. And it affects the gut microbiota and causing chronic inflammation. Obesity itself is a chronic inflammatory disease and increases in circulating levels of inflammatory cytokines, even without any disease. And obesity causes, of course, we know the insulin resistance, which leads to type 2 diabetes mellitus, which is recognized as a very high risk factor in the COVID-19. And also, there are other things that happen in the obese or overweight people. Basically, obesity increases vascular senescence and they are leading to ischemia. Blood vessels become older at the biological level. And it causes microvascular dysfunction, which again results in insulin resistance. And the capillary rarefaction, the number of capillaries in a given amount of tissue will come down. That causes tissue oxygenation low or hypoxia. And obesity impairs the mitochondrial biogenesis. The mitochondria has to be made, the cells have to keep on making mitochondria, the powerhouses of cells, and obesity affects their biogenesis, leading to impacted energy homeostasis, because basically people cannot burn the energy calories, and again, they keep on putting more weight. And obesity decreases the brown fat deposit. Brown fat is the one that actually helps us to lose weight, and that results in the less energy utilization. And also obesity, chronic obesity or morbid obesity can whiten even the brown fat by accumulating too much fat in there. Triglycerides in the brown fat. And finally, obesity negatively impacts lung capacity and function, and Dr. Garimella will talk about it later. Now, if you take it overall, all these things will result in a very complex situation whereby obesity affects not only the respiratory dysfunction as is related to the COVID, but also it causes a lot of comorbid conditions like cardiovascular diseases, diabetes mellitus, and kidney diseases, and metabolic abnormalities. If you put all these things, the obesity complicates the whole picture, the physiology and pathophysiology, resulting in the higher incidence of severe COVID-19 disease or even mortality. Now, if you just look, if you ignore all these complications and look at how the infection itself is affected by obesity, there are papers coming up and showing up that if you load these cells with cholesterol, that means there is too much cholesterol in the cell, it enhances the endocytic entry of the SARS-CoV in vitro. And the cholesterol also increases the, or actually diverts the ACE2, the putative receptor for these viruses, into the entry point. It's like inviting something into the cell. And also decreases the, if you decrease the cholesterol, you actually reverse these conditions. Now, the levels of ACE2 expression in the adipose tissue, we often ignore. Actually, it's much higher in the adipose tissue than in the lung tissue. That is a big issue because some experts believe that the virus may survive in adipose tissue for a long time. So adipose tissue can harbor the virus longer than in the rest of the body. This is an important finding because in the long term, it is going to have an effect. How far we can cure the coronavirus disease in obese patients is very different from the normal people. Now, obesity may also facilitate the spread of infection. There is data in related viruses like influenza A viruses. Obesity increases the duration of the virus shedding. Symptomatic patients with obesity shed the virus 42% longer than the adults who do not have obesity. This is something that has not been investigated in the COVID-19 or SARS, this virus infection, but it's highly possible because they are all related viruses. Now, the obesity, type 2 diabetes mellitus, and dipeptidyl peptidase 4 and COVID-2 are all connected in a very complex way. There is a high prevalence of type 2 diabetes mellitus among the individuals affected by COVID-19, especially in those with who need ICU care, that we know. Then human dipeptidyl peptidase, DPP4, was identified as a functional receptor for the spike protein of the MERS-CoV, which is very much related to the SARS-CoV-2 we have now. And antibodies directed against DPP4 inhibit the human coronavirus Erasmus Medical Center virus, which is also a related virus infection in primary human bronchial epithelial cells. So there is a lot of evidence that DPP is involved in the viruses that are very close to the COVID-2, CoV-2 we have right now. Now, if you look into the adipose tissue, DPP4 is expressed extensively, and it's there. And the circulating levels of DPP4 are increased as proportion to the body mass index and also the adipose tissue content. The more fat we have, the more DPP4 is in the circulation. So on the other hand, we are talking about inhibiting the DPP4 antagonism as a means of controlling the blood sugar, reducing the insulin resistance, and causing the release of GLP-1 like peptides. So if you have obese condition and you already have a situation whereby your drugs
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Vijay, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you. I think Dr. Kishore got disconnected.
Yeah, he's frozen.
It's frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's already 7 minutes. I'm going to stop anyhow. So we'll, can you disconnect and then we'll ask Vijay, I will introduce Umaga. Yeah.
I'm not able to stop the screen.
Oh, okay, good. So, Dr. Kalai, can you introduce Uma or you want me to? Can you hear me? Oh, I think your microphone may be unmuted something. Your microphone, somebody's saying your microphone something.
No, on the bottom left-hand side, you see the join audio. You have to select that one.
Or maybe log out and come back one time. Yeah. I will introduce Uma Garu. So you log out and come back. Okay. Leave the program. So I will introduce Dr. Uma Koduri. She's our chair of AAPI Obesity Committee, and she's been working amazingly for last so many years about all our yellow shirts and encouraging everybody on obesity. And so we anywhere, anytime we go to AAPI meeting, we have to make sure that we take our yellow shirt. She's been working as an internist at Jack C. Montgomery VA Medical Center, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she has been very active in obesity for many, many years. She's inspiring everyone in obesity campaign, not only USA or all over the world. And her topic will be an obesity revolution role in COVID-19 pandemic. Vijay Garu, can you make the PowerPoint so that Uma can speak? Go ahead, start, Uma.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about obesity in COVID. First of all, I want to thank all the AAPI leaders, especially Dr. Suresh Reddy, Dr. Kishore Belamkonda, Dr. Lokesh Edara, and also the previous presidents, Dr. Sankurao and Dr. Jayesh Shah, for always like encouraging me, motivating me, and guiding me in doing my obesity awareness campaigns, which I have been doing for the last almost 8 to 9 years. So we have made some great strides in all these years, and that's why we want to call this as a obesity revolution. And I basically want to talk about 4 or 5 points. The introduction, basically what Dr. Kishore Belamkonda was talking about. That's basically the obesity. It causes increased risk for COVID, especially in the younger population. Can we have the next slide? Okay. Many people don't know that obesity has been recognized as a disease by the American Medical Association 7 years ago. To be exact, in June of 2013, that was in Chicago. So, and obesity is now a global epidemic. Next slide. Yeah. What can be done to fight the obesity epidemic? The World Health Organization, it has recognized that prevention is the most feasible option for curbing the childhood obesity epidemic. Parents, schools, communities, states, and countries can help to make the healthy choice the easy choice. And as Nelson Mandela, I like this slide a lot. Education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. So because of this, we thought this is what we are going to do. AAPI leaders, all the doctors, this is what we have been doing for the past many years, trying to educate the public, especially the school children, and then all the others. And we took up this initiative to fight childhood obesity on 12-12-12. That's December 12th of 2012. And then since then, we have done a lot of these events in almost like more than 100 schools in USA. And in India, we did I think about 12 schools. And can we have the next slide? Yeah. And then I want to talk about the logos. During the campaign, we wanted to make it interesting. And so we made this logo. And I want to talk more about this logo. Basically, around the world map, we have, can we have the next slide, please? Yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah, around the world, you have the rainbow colored, the rim. It basically means obesity can affect a diverse population, irrespective of the race, color, culture, religion. And then you see the track. In the track, you see a man, woman, and a child. It basically means the whole family is involved, should be involved in trying to tackle this obesity. And then the center part is the yellow. What we thought, just like how we use the color red for heart disease awareness, we chose the color yellow. And yeah, can we have the next slide? There are actually like 3 or 4 logos that we use. Like for childhood obesity, we use a tagline, be fit, be cool, because children, they like to be cool. That's how we chose the tagline. And for adult obesity, we usually use this tagline, be healthy, be happy. And at one time, yeah. And for the veteran population, we made this logo that we print out on the t-shirts and give to the veterans during our campaign. And this is the latest logo. We wanted to do this campaign on a worldwide scale. Actually, we wanted to do it on May 25th of this year, but because of the COVID, we couldn't do it. And yeah. And then sometimes we also use this particular picture. This picture got the first prize in the Intel photo competition in 2013. For childhood obesity, we use this tagline, be fit, be cool. Next slide. And for adult obesity, we use the tagline, be healthy, be happy. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, the reason we chose yellow is because yellow stands for energy, motivation, hope, optimism, joy, and happiness. So that was the reason we chose yellow. And so during our campaigns, whenever possible, we use yellow t-shirts, yellow decorations, yellow balloons, and all that. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is Proclamation. The previous slide, please. Can you go to the previous slide? Yeah. We got an official proclamation from the governor of Oklahoma to proclaim wear yellow for childhood obesity and obesity awareness. And this we got in 2013. Next slide. And then right now, AAPI, it's in the process of getting the wear yellow proclamation from the White House, so it can be implemented nationwide. And then I was thinking, later on, we can try to get it maybe through the World Health Organization, so we can use it all over the world. Yeah, and that's about the AAPI initiative to get a proclamation. And then the basic messages during our campaign that we basically, we eat less, eat healthy, and move more. That's the basic summary. And for children, we try to promote this, the 5210 magic for childhood obesity. It's easy for the children to remember this. 5 stands for 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. 2 for 2 hours or less of recreational screen time. 1 stands for like 1 hour or more of physical activity. And 0 is for like 0 sugary drinks, drink more water, and low fat milk. And for adult obesity, we sort of modified this 5210. It's the same thing, except we also we want to control the portion size. Use a small plate with no seconds, and make sure half your plate is fruits and vegetables. And then avoid too much sitting. Like sitting is like the new smoking. It's a risk factor for high morbidity. And then every minute, one second. We should avoid prolonged sitting. You know, like we should get up and move for a minute every like half an hour. And then we can even do like 10 minutes at a time. And overall, if we should aim for at least 150 minutes per week. And then, yeah, next slide. Yeah, and this is the other thing that we promote in the schools, choose my plate. Basically, half your plate should be fruits and vegetables. Next slide. Yeah, and this is, we need to eat like colorful fruits and vegetables because these are loaded with nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. We use this in our logo, the rainbow colors. Yeah, good foods that are naturally colorful. Next slide. Most of these are pictures. Next slide. Yeah, many people don't know that a small can of soda has 10 teaspoons of sugar. So just imagine if you put 10 teaspoons in a cup of tea, how sweet that would be. So this is one other thing that we try to teach the kids in the schools. And juices, lemonade, they're not good. They have plenty of sugar. Next slide. Yeah, and then exercise doesn't mean just walking or jogging. Even housework, gardening, any activity other than just sitting and watching, you know, TV or playing video games. Any kind of activity will be considered as exercise. Next slide. Oh, these are some of the pictures during our school events. This particular one is from one of our schools in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Next one. Yeah, this is a picture that we took when we started this obesity revolution on 12/12/12. Next one. And this is the AAPI, the pilot school program, which we did on April 6th, 2013. This was the very, very first school program that we did. And after this, it took us about, since 2000, it took us about 3 years to cover more than like 100 schools across 15 states. Next slide. Now, this is the pilot program in India. This was in Jubilee Hills High School in Hyderabad. This was in 2015. After this, we did like 12 more schools in India. Next one. Most of these are pictures. And then after we did the 100 schools focusing on childhood obesity, we switched to the veteran obesity awareness events, because the incidence of obesity is much, much higher in veterans compared to the general population. So far, we did 7 events, and then we are hoping to do about 100 such events for our veterans. We'll do it over the next few years. Next one. These are some of the pictures for the veteran obesity. These pictures, yeah, they have most of the speakers. Today's speakers, they're all in these pictures. Next one. 7 continents, yeah. We actually started off with walkathons, health walkathons on 11/11/11. I love these nice, unique dates.
11
so the very first health walkathon that we did on one single day on 11/11/11, we did events across 5 continents. In New Zealand, then in some events in India, then UK, that's Europe.
Hello.
Then,
yeah, you're there.
Yes. And then Africa and many cities in USA. And then recently in 2019, I think December, and can you hear me?
Yeah, it's 10 minutes done, Uma.
Yeah, okay, I'm almost done. And in January of 2020, Suresh, Dr. Suresh and his team, they covered the last 2 continents. Next one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is basically we want to do it all over the world. And then we tried to do it on Memorial Day, but because of the COVID, we had to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you, Uma. I really, really appreciate your kind presentation
Yeah,
and
this is
all
the
hard work.
yeah.
Are you, Dr. Kalai, are you on? Vijay, she's joined with iPhone, I think. The 3 screens.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, finally.
You stop one of the computer off. You have both of them on.
Okay.
Please introduce Dr. Uma General Gada.
Okay. Am I on or?
Yeah, you're on. You can go ahead.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Suresh and Lotka for this opportunity. Let me introduce the third speaker, Dr. Uma Maheshwari Jonalagada. She's from Atlanta and am I logged out?
No, you're okay. We hear very well.
Oh, because I can't see the screen.
No
Okay. She's from Atlanta and she's one of my buddies. We have worked together in lots of projects, but I know that she's worked with AAPI in the obesity project. She's going to be talking, her topic is COVID-19 imperative to tackle obesity. She's a family practice physician and she works at Douglas, Georgia, Hazelwood Family Clinic. Welcome, Dr. Uma, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Kalai, for your kind introduction. I'm Uma Maheshwari Jonalagada. I actually practice in rural Georgia as a family physician. It is my privilege to be part of AAPI, Adult Obesity Awareness Campaign. The coronavirus shows why we have to tackle the obesity crisis. Number 1, universally obese patients are filling the ICUs. Patients who are obese are more likely to require mechanical ventilation. Patients with BMI over 35 are carrying excess weight in their abdomen below the diaphragm. You move your diaphragm towards your feet every time when you take a breath. And if you have an extra 80 pounds or more to move, that makes it more difficult. With COVID-19 pathology, the fluid leaks into the airways, makes it harder to breathe, and the diaphragm has to work harder, and the obesity restricts this. Number 2, obese patients has livers that has overfilled with fat. Inflammation is another major factor. Fat itself is metabolically active and therefore produces a fair number of cytokines, a type of immune protein. It is as if your body is battling itself continuously, a little war with background inflammation. Now superimpose this mechanism with a bigger battle with novel coronavirus that the immune system has never seen before, and it becomes hyperactivated. Another area is the role of AC2 protein in the fat cells. This protein has been researched as one of the keys for the COVID-19 virus, since the virus can bind it in order to gain entry into the cell. And number 3 is obesity may be more often the primary risk factor for the younger patients with COVID. Obesity is not just a epidemic, but pandemic. The obesity rate in some states is 40% or higher, and in other states it's in the upper teens. Average in the United States, it's about 36%. It's costing us trillions of dollars. It is a metabolic problem. Genes set the table for the obesity, and the environment serves it up. The only choices are what do you do about it? And then when the health system restricts access to the care, they leave patients with no good choices to make. Simply advising people lose weight and be more active has been consistently ineffective. If you want to tackle obesity seriously, we need to look at it like any other health condition. We need to provide care that actually helps with the problem, such as behavior therapy, pharmacotherapy, and bariatric surgery. COVID-19 does indeed made it clear that untreated obesity is a serious health problem. If we actually start taking this seriously, we'll find ways to provide better access to real obesity care. Heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and of course, obesity are well-known problems in Georgia and has contributed to disproportionate effects of the COVID-19 virus. Not only are these known risk factors for severe COVID, but they also tend to be more pervasive among racial and ethnic minorities. Frankly speaking, we have unhealthy population. 80% of the COVID positive and 94% who died from COVID in southeastern part of Georgia had hypertension. However, the pandemic has taken a completely different shape compared to Southwest. In Savannah, 630-bed hospital, Memorial Health University, saw only 29 COVID patients at its peak on May 1st. Savannah has not only has wealthier residents from Atlanta, but also have few residents who have comorbidities that predispose to worse COVID-19 outcomes. I did obesity awareness walk in Savannah during our GAPI regional meeting and at the historic monument. Furthermore, I helped to educate the local community during the health fair in our hospital at Douglas, Georgia. And I also done some Zumba classes with the local community and friends for obesity awareness. We have also done local campaigns, as Uma Koduri said in the past, raising awareness for childhood obesity in the schools in our community. The schools here, the people here responded well. I recommend AAPI to continue educating the public with regard to the obesity awareness, especially with it being more severe risk factor in taking the lives of the people. Obesity is a public health crisis in USA and international, and with the prevalence is increasing rapidly in numerous industrial nations. I thank Uma Koduri for her dedication towards this campaign and all our teammates to come up with the ways for this campaign to be successful. We are planning to do a obesity walk and a Zumba in the upcoming convention due to the current circumstances forcing a virtual convention. Please continue to spread awareness in your cities and local areas. I thank AAPI President Dr. Suresh Reddy for his persistent efforts in organizing these webinars during this essential time. Thank you.
Thank you, Uma. I really appreciate it. You're first lady of next AAPI next year, so your next year will be very stressful for you and Sudhakar. I guarantee you on that. Be ready. Dr. Kala, you want to say anything before we go to the Padmaja?
I don't know. Do you want to do one of the chat questions? Or
I think we'll wait at the end of the talks.
Okay.
All the talks.
Yes. Yeah. I've known Uma, doing all the projects she was talking about. And thank you, Uma. Like Laura said, you're the next first lady of AAPI. And welcome. And I'm sure you'll do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next speaker is Dr. Padmaja Adsumalli. And she's going to give us a talk on obesity impact on veterans, COVID-19 mortality. And she's a co-chair of AAPI Obesity Committee, medical director of HBPC, Kansas City, Virginia Medical Center, Kansas, Missouri. Padmaja, Dr. Padmaja, can you go ahead and start your talk, please?
Good evening. Good evening to you all. How are you doing, guys, today?
Good, good.
Okay.
Lot of interesting points I'm hearing from Dr. Kishore and Dr. Uma. Dr. Uma. Now I am Padmaja, as I mentioned. I work for the Kansas City VA Medical Center. Thank you, AAPI, for giving a chance to Obesity Committee to present our thoughts as well as discuss the obesity impact on our patients morbidity as well as mortality rates, especially in the times of COVID-15. For a long time, we have been learning that fad diets, using excessive alcohol, smoking, using drugs are known to be causing a lot of pathology and morbidity. But recently, we've been hearing that it's also causing a lot of problems, also the sedentary lifestyles, as well as the medical non-compliance is causing a lot of pathology. In search of a healthy, health promoting lifestyles, I got interested in knowing more about obesity and its role in creating or producing the pathology in our bodies. As earlier, our previous speakers mentioned, the obesity has become a pandemic. More than we used to think it's only epidemic, but now we are noticing this obesity problem is pretty much everywhere, except few countries in the Southern Africa where they might be going through starvation and all, but mostly a lot of countries. When we look at the US population, as in this cartoon shows, the 33% of women are around normal weight, whereas 30% of them are overweight and 37% of women are obese. Coming to the men, this is in US general population. Men, only 25% are at the normal weight and 40% are overweight and 35% seems to be obese. This trend is getting worse in veterans. We all know that in a VA system, we use a vital signs package. It's in the electronic computer records, we have it for the last 20 plus years. In April 2017, Journal of General Internal Medicine published an article with the caption or title, "The Obesity Epidemic in the Veterans of Health Administration." They started this study and in 2014, at that point, the researchers looked at VA vital signs data for nearly 5 million primary care patients. 5 million primary care patients, and looking at all their vital signs. And finally, the researchers concluded that less than 25% of these patients are at normal weight, and 75% of them are either overweight or obese. We look at the BMI. BMI less than 25 is normal, whereas more than 25 is considered obesity. 25 to 30 BMI is called overweight. When the BMI goes above 30%, that's when we call it as obesity. Again, in the obesity, there are levels. Obesity level 1, level 2, level 3. So here in our population, our VA population, we noticed only 1/4 of patients are at the normal BMI and 3/4 are above the normal ideal weight, ideal BMI. So looking at these pictures, you can see that male veterans are 40% overweight and 32% obese. Female veterans are 31% overweight and 37% obese. Again, this study pointed out the obesity prevalence is varied across the racial and ethnic subpopulations, with highest obesity prevalence being among Black women. 51% of them are having obesity issue. Women with schizophrenia, either medications or the disease process or the emotional status induced by the schizophrenia, 56% of them have obesity problem. And both men and women with diabetes, looking at the number, 68% to 56% in men are suffering with obesity while having the disease of diabetes. Whether the chicken first or egg first, we can look at it. As you see in this cartoon, you will know that the prevalence of diseases among veterans compared to non-veterans, how even diabetes, which is caused by obesity, reflux disease, cardiac disease, and many types of cancers, emphysema, and mental health problems are more common or more prevalent in veterans compared to non-veterans. And these wounded warriors have additional burden of mental health issues also to fight against. So physically, with their physical health is getting upset by the obesity issue, and emotional problems that are caused by their service time and emotional struggles during this service time. As you might have seen in the news, since March, April, May, we have been looking at it, our VA patients dying from the COVID or corona cases. So there is an uptrend slowly. They are going up and up. And if you remember, the obesity study did point out the same populations do have a higher obesity rates. This higher morbidity and mortality is getting significant in blacks and browns, and that's the same patients we did notice the obesity being higher prevalent, higher, higher numbers. So this is how we've been following the numbers. And going to the next slide, these are the current statistics I gathered yesterday. In US, the total number of COVID positive cases are 2.1 million. Deaths around 117,000. So the coming about the national case fatality rate is only 6%. But in our US veterans, the positive cases are only 17,000, but our patients died 1,435 patients out of 17,000, which brings the veteran case fatality rate around 8%. That's compared to the national case fatality rate, veterans is getting higher. So, and also I want to share this slide from Louisiana Department of Health. This is where in the southern state where they were affected, they have 185 patients, they died, and the state department were able to gather the underlying these conditions and how many patients had that one. They put it in this figure. If you look at it, the diabetes, 40% of those patients that died because of corona or COVID had diabetes. 25% of them have obesity, 23% of them have kidney disease, 21% have cardiac, and you can see the rest of the numbers. Pulmonary only 12%, neurological 6%, and immunosuppressed 4%. Any disease we think of, immunosuppressant patients would get more infections, die with it. But not here with the COVID or corona. You see this obesity, 25% is causing, having that problem. And obesity itself causes diabetes as a next step. So this is why I am a little bit became very restless about the obesity and its problems it is causing. And we need to take the obesity more seriously than any other diseases we deal with in our population. And thank you for this chance to talk about obesity revolution and what we need to do going forward and how we can make our patients, families, and friends more healthier.
Thank you, Padmaja. I really appreciate it. Next speaker is our Pooja Kinkbawala. Sorry for last name pronouncing. Co-chair of our AAPI Obesity Committee, AAPI MSRF President, and Endocrinology Fellow, Larkin Community Hospital, Miami, Florida. She's going to talk about childhood obesity and COVID-19. Pooja is very, very helpful whenever I ask for writing a step 1, step 2 things she take up, and she will get it done in a couple of days on a time. Pooja, take over, share screen, please.
Thank you so much. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for this opportunity. Being in endocrinology, this topic is very near and dear to my heart and something that I've been seeing a lot of changes of recently. And so definitely very excited to talk about some of the new stuff that we're discussing in the endocrinology field with you guys today. What we've been noticing so far is that there is a significant increase in childhood obesity during the quarantine period. This is mainly because of 3 main factors. Number 1 is they're home all day. They're not able to get the same amount of exercise as they would in school with physical education. And their parents a lot of times parents are very stressed out. They don't know how to handle the fact that the kids are home all day for longer periods of time than they're used to. So they're sitting in front of screens more. You know, they're playing more video games, they're watching TV, they're on iPads, other sources. And so again, they're not getting that same amount of physical activity. That combined with the fact that we are under quarantine and parents are less likely to send their kids outside to play, so they're forced to get what other activity they're getting in inside. Another factor is food. A lot of times, especially in the some of the lower economic communities, they have what are known as food deserts, so they're not able to get fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, other than whatever's packaged and high in carbohydrates, high in salt, high in sugar. And that's what their diet has been consisting of, because when they're in school, they're able to get some of the more nutritious meals. Also, because they're home all day, kids are more likely to get fed more sugary foods. And so with that, we're seeing an increase in weight from school-age kids all the way up to 21 with college-age kids because of that. Associated with this, these children and adolescents that are becoming obese are having more of the same picture that we're seeing with adults that are presenting with metabolic syndrome, diabetes, hypertension. And so they're more likely to have the severe illness if infected with COVID. They're more likely to be hospitalized. They're more likely to require ventilation in those settings, as opposed to their peers that do not have any of these comorbidities or other factors. We've also seen that they have similar physiologic responses as adults do that have obesity and metabolic syndrome, including the increase of the ACE2 receptors, which we've been discussing, an increase in PCSK, and an increase in interleukin-6. They've also done a few studies in New York that have shown that in addition to these inflammatory responses, they've also noticed a decrease in CD4 counts when adolescents that are obese and admitted for COVID and require ventilation, as opposed to their peers and as opposed to adults. This is also associated with decrease in B cell and decrease in some of the antibodies that we would normally see in these patients. There also is an increase in CRP in a lot of these patients as well, which we also see in adults with obesity. So all in all, the biggest thing that we need to keep in mind is that obesity affects everybody, all the way down from children in elementary school, adolescents, adults, and that's affecting them the same, COVID is affecting them the same way. One things that we can do with our patients or anyone in our community is to basically is to promote any sort of physical activity. Like was mentioned before with the childhood obesity, anything around the house, dancing, helping with housework, helping with cooking, moving around, getting any activity they can to get them off the couch, to get them off the screens. In addition to that, helping with preparing the meals, whatever they're able to do, that way they get an idea of, you know, what goes into making the meal and what their plate should be composed of. There's a lot of food pantries that are coming up and food delivery systems that are helping communities, providing them with fresh food, providing them with more wholesome food so that families can get the nutrition that they need without having to eat fast food or packaged food, which contains a lot of additives and can contribute to the childhood obesity. Again, I want to thank you guys very much for this opportunity to share some of my findings about childhood obesity and its effects on COVID, and excited to hear what the rest of the panel has to say.
Thank you so much, Pooja. Dr. Kalai, you'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Prasad.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. You know, as the saying goes, you know, catch them young, and we had a young speaker to talk about childhood obesity in COVID. Thank you. Our next and last but not least speaker is Dr. Prasad Garimella, another my home state doctor. He's the Chief of Internal Medicine at Northside Gwinnett Hospital, and he will be talking about pulmonary complications in obese COVID-19 patients. Dr. Prasad.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Go ahead, sir.
Can you see this screen?
Yep, very well.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about COVID, the lung, and then the obesity. So I think when I talk to the patients for the first time about the obesity, I always use this phrase, you are not tall enough for the weight. So I wanted to just start there and see. So either you get stretched or you lose weight. Let's see, play. All right, so the outline of my talk is basically about these 5 topics. And the last 2, we have very limited data, but at least we'll go over the very quickly and open up for the question and answer section. So obesity and lung function, obesity and inflammation, and obesity and lung diseases, and what is happening in the COVID and lung, and obesity and the COVID. So those are the 5 topics we'll talk about. Very quickly, it's a pathophysiology tour, but obesity and lung function, what happens when the BMI goes up? One of the common things is basically the breathing pattern changes. Normally we breathe around 10 to 12. These people, they breathe a lot more faster, but they have low lung volumes, tidal volumes. So the compliance, which is basically delta volume by delta pressure, for each change in the pressure, how much volume they get, it gets low. Both the lung compliance and chest wall compliance goes down. So one of the common features that we can all identify in the lung volumes is basically the expirated reserve volume is most consistently reduced. And there's an exponential drop as the BMI goes up, especially above 40, your ERV or expiratory reserve volume is in single digits. And obviously the low functional reserve capacity is seen also with this. So we all notice this low vital capacity or FVC in these patients on spirometry, and FEV1 can also be low, but that leads to either a normal or a high ratio. So that's a restrictive pattern. So as far as the pattern of obesity is concerned, the abdominal obesity is disproportionately affects the lung function a lot more than the non-central obesity. So abdominal obesity, that's why the waist circumference is a key when you are interpreting the PFT. That will help us better than just the BMI alone. So as far as oxygenation and VQ are concerned, there is obviously greater VQ mismatch in these people. And that happens because of the premature closure of the small airways in the dependent areas. The dependent areas are basically where the pressure from the abdominal girth or abdominal weight is coming and closing these smaller airways. So one of the classic features that is commonly, tested in the fellows and in the pulmonary boards is that the AA gradient usually increases. That means there is more hypoxia with exercise in normal people. But in obese people, AA gradient decreases with exercise. That is mainly because you are going to recruit more alveoli when you do the exercise, so you have less hypoxemia. And then the diffusion is generally well preserved in these people. These are the lung function things that we see. So the obesity, these are the mechanical problems that cause on the lung function. So the second part, that how the obesity affects the lung, is by the inflammation. So the WAT and BAT, white adipose tissue and the brown adipose tissue, basically acts like endocrine organ. There are a lot of cytokines that are produced, so those are called adipokines. One of the common ones that we know are the leptin and adiponectin. Lectin increases parallel to the fat stores, and it also interacts with the orexogenic or anorexic pathways, and it is the primary pro-inflammatory adipokine. So the more white adipose tissue you have, more leptin you have, more leptin you have, more inflammation. I have a slide, and that might be the key why people with obesity have more inflammation in the lung. The connection is most likely related to the leptin. Adiponectin falls in obesity, and it's somewhat of an anti-inflammatory agent. So there are multiple studies showing that there is chronic low-grade inflammation present in obesity that is basically high CRP, and there's a PAI1 levels. So the precise reason why the inflammation increases in obesity is not known. These are the three pathways with which it is explained. One of them is the endoplasmic reticulum stress. The second one is oxidative stress. And the third one is related to the hypoxia. So we'll kind of double click on that third thing, which is the hypoxia, which I think makes sense. So the hypoxia may be due to the mismatch between the expanded fat depot and its blood supply. In other words, just like a cancer cell grows beyond its vascular supply that limits its growth, in adipose tissue also, the vascularity is not reaching the peripheral or areas with less vascularity. Those cells, those adipocytes distant from the vasculature, obviously will have hypoxia. So that leads to the cellular response. That stimulates the inflammation or the angiogenesis cascade. So that makes a pathophysiological sense why the hypoxemia of the adipose cells lead on to the inflammation. On one slide on the leptin, leptin is a primary pro-inflammatory adipokine. So leptin, along with its receptor, is expressed a lot more in the human lung, including the bronchial epithelial cells. So the lungs may therefore be a target organ for leptin signaling. So it's noted even in the obese mice have innate airway hyperresponsiveness. That's why the obese people are more likely to have asthma, mainly because of this airway hyperresponsiveness, which may be leptin mediated. So they also took some lean mice and they gave the exogenous leptin, and they started seeing the allergen-induced hyperreactivity in those patients. So the leptin may be the connection between the obesity and lung inflammation that we see. So that's about the second part of it. So the third part is basically the obesity and lung diseases. So as we all know, many manifestations of the obesity on the lung. So one of them is the obstructive sleep apnea. The classic case is, there's a study, beautiful study, is basically they did the sleep study on these medical students who were lean with a small waist circumference. On the first day, no one had the sleep apnea. And then the second day, they all were asked to, you can only do it in medical students, right? So they were asked to sleep with an 11-pound sandbag attached to their belly. And because of that loading on that belly, so they all ended up having some amount of sleep apnea. So obviously the central obesity or abdominal girth is going to obviously cause some amount of obstructive sleep apnea. Obviously the narrowing of the upper airway. So obesity hypoventilation syndrome, which is basically hypercapnia from hypoventilation. We talked about the pulmonary function, that how it goes down the tidal volume. Obviously, a low tidal volume is going to increase the CO2. That's why these people can have hypercapnia. Obviously, atelectasis is very common. It is VQ mismatch. So especially the lower lung zones, which are pushed by the belly and the diaphragm is pushed upward, that is going to cause atelectasis. The lung units are closed, but the blood supply is still going on. So they are going to have atelectasis. We notice that especially in patients when they get the surgery, post-operatively especially after the abdominal surgery, they're all going to be more hypoxic because of this atelectasis. And then asthma, we talked about the hyperresponsiveness that is commonly noted in obese patients. Obviously obesity is a risk factor for the pulmonary embolism, and pulmonary hypertension is also more common. These are the obesity-related lung diseases. So, and one more slide on this obesity and influenza. So when we had this H1N1 pandemic, there was, I think Dr. Kishore also shared the slide. So there's greater mortality among obese during that epidemic or endemic that we saw. 61% of the deaths with H1N1 were obese. So the obese and pregnant people were getting more mortality with H1N1. So, and they also replicated the same thing in the mice. Almost all of these mice died with the H1N1 if they were obese, whereas non-obese, only 14% died. So we'll come to the fourth topic, which is COVID and the lung. So I have few, these are not confirmatory, but this is one of the editorial from Lancet, which makes perfect sense to me as a pulmonologist and a critical care specialist. So what they are saying is, like, if the injury from the COVID is predominantly epithelial, they are usually asymptomatic or mild disease. So there is no endothelial damage. So on the other side of the gas exchange is your endothelium. And if the endothelium is involved, those are the people who are getting moderate to severe disease and they're getting hospitalized. And that is mainly explained by these three things, which is once the endothelial injury is coming on, it is giving a cascade of procoagulation. So that's why you need to treat with aggressive early anticoagulation. The second cascade that is being stimulated is, because of that endothelial injury, is a hyperinflammation. So the cytokine storm is induced by that endothelial injury. And that's where the steroids and IL-6 inhibitors. I'm very glad that the steroid is panning out to be the cheap and thing. So I'm very glad with that study. Dr. Lokesh has been promoting this for almost a month now. And the last one is basically this leads on to this pneumonitis. In the hospital, we are seeing it as a hypoxia. We're treating them with the prone, the paralytics, and we're basically throwing a kitchen sink at these people. So we are currently using remdesivir, tocilizumab, proning, paralyzing them.
Okay. So we have time up. Sorry.
That's my last slide.
Okay.
So it's not a lecture, it's just a talk. And basically, I wanted to thank AAPI. So, it moved with this COVID, it has moved, the AAPI has moved predominantly from a social platform to a knowledge sharing professional platform. I'm very, very glad, and my sincere and honest admiration for that change. I think that's a perception among all the people also. I really appreciate that. And
sorry, we are almost time done because there's not time. 8:30 is already 8:28. I think we need to have time window. We have 3 questions. I think we can answer that in the next meeting. Those questions, we can get back to those 3 questions. So Kishore, Suresh, you want to take over to the next meeting? Thank you for all the speakers. I really appreciate Dr. Kalai.
Thank you very much. Whoever is watching on the Facebook and YouTube, they can stay. But I think now we have to exit this and click on the next link. Maybe you can copy and save this link on your desktop. So this is the next link for the next talk. Please join that. And you can even click there, I think. Keep the password and click it on the Zoom, and you should go there. 011199. Let me see.